In AD 16, on the flat meadows along the Weser River, the Roman Empire sought vengeance. 7 years earlier, 3 Roman legions under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus had been annihilated in the Teutoburg forest. Varus and his legions were betrayed by his trusted officer Arminius, a Cherusci noble who had served Rome. Now, the Roman general Germanicus Julius Caesar, the adopted son of Emperor Tiberius, led a vast force across the Rhine to break the power of the united German tribes and avenge the disaster at the Teutoburg forest. Germanicus had spent months organizing and preparing for his crucial campaign in Germania. With 8 legions, strong auxiliaries, and plentiful cavalry under his command, he marched deep into enemy territory. Arminius, a cunning commander, knew all too well he could not match Roman strength and discipline in open-pitched battle. So he opted for guerrilla tactics, attempting to lure the Romans into ambushes. However, Germanicus was no fool. He evaded these traps. Undeterred in his mission, he crossed the Weser River. Arminius and his allies gathered a large force of Germanic tribesmen to contest the Roman advance. Directly across the Weser River lay the plain of Edistaviso, stretching between a wooded ridge and the river. It was a place where cavalry could maneuver, but where the Germans also had the cover of trees at their backs. According to Roman historian Tacitus, the Romans fielded a force of about 60,000 men. In contrast, the Germanic tribes may have fielded a force of similar stature. However, the exact figure is not recorded. Tacitus tells us the Germans took position along the forest line, with cavalry hidden in the woods. Arminius urged them on with fiery words, reminding them of their glorious triumph at the Teutoburg. Germanicus arrayed his men in the classic Roman fashion, legions in the center, including 2 cohorts of elite Praetorian Guard, auxiliaries stationed at the front with cavalry on the wings. He encouraged his troops by recalling their fallen comrades at the Teutoburg and promising them vengeance and overwhelming victory. A day prior to both forces meeting upon the plains of Edistaviso, there had been a major skirmish to secure the river crossing. Germanicus arrayed his cavalry, made up of primarily Gallic, Batavian, and Germanic allied riders, into sections. Then he ordered a swift crossing to engage Arminius's forces before the Germanics could get an advantageous defensive position, ultimately making it impossible for the Romans to cross and mount an offensive. This attack was spearheaded by the Roman elite auxiliary riders, the Batavians, led by their commander, Chariovalda, Arminius's Germanic warriors, primarily from the Cherusci tribes, with contingents from the Chatti, Bructeri, and Marsi tribes prepared themselves to face the elite auxiliary Roman cavalry. This bold and reckless maneuver by Germanicus and the Romans presented Arminius with a ripe opportunity. The Germanic commander, an excellent strategist when it came to ambushing, would use this moment to his army's advantage. He spread his forces outward to face the oncoming contingents of Roman cavalry, drawing them further away from their center, where the bulk of their elite Batavian cavalry lay. Once the Roman cavalry had engaged with Arminius's troops, he ordered his center to feign a retreat, luring the Batavian cavalry into giving pursuit, which in turn succeeded in drawing the Batavians further away from the rest of their allies. Now they were surrounded by woods and exposed from all directions. It was at this crucial moment that Arminius sprung his trap. His hidden forces sprinted from the surrounding woods and began to flank and encircle the now tied-down Roman cavalry from all directions. The Batavian contingent and their commander Chariovalda were hopelessly trapped on all sides, making a retreat all but impossible. The elite Batavian auxiliaries were now forced to fight tooth and nail on all fronts. Only their discipline, high levels of skill, superior armor and equipment allowed them to continue fighting on. However, given the dire circumstances, this just slowed down the inevitable. They were slowly being cut down by the long spears of the Germanic infantry, coupled with projectiles and javelins being hurled at them from all directions. Fighting a losing fight, and with the certainty of complete destruction, the battalion commander Chariovalda decided to make a bold move. Himself and some of his men decided to make a sacrifice, allocating precious time for the rest of his men to escape with their lives, whilst allowing Germanicus and his legions enough time to cross the river uncontested. Chariovalda and his men suicidally rode straight into the center of the Germanic line. This brave maneuver gave a much-needed opportunity for the remainder of his men to smash through the rear and escape back to the main Roman force. Chariovalda and his contingent was swiftly overwhelmed and killed. Although disastrous for the Romans, this minor battle allowed Germanicus and his legions to cross the Weser River uncontested and set up camp in an advantageous position. With the river crossing secured and a fortified camp erected, Germanicus allowed his men a good night's rest. Early the following morning, he carefully arranged his army in a strong battle formation, legions in the center, cavalry on the wings, archers and light troops in front to skirmish. Confident in his legions, Germanicus formed up to give battle. Arminius was now faced with two decisions: either retreat to more favorable terrain or face the Romans head-on. He opted for the latter, inspiring his Germanic companion before the clash of battle. He gave the order and his ranks of warriors went on the offensive, looking to smash through the Roman front lines with their numbers. The Romans in response advanced methodically. Germanicus sent forth his auxiliary troops of Gallic and Germanic warriors, supported by archers whose task was to break the frontal charge of the Germanic horde. The clash began with missile exchanges. Then the auxiliary infantry surged forward in disciplined ranks to break the Germanic frontal cohesion. The Roman auxiliaries executed their mission of breaking the Germanic frontal charge. Germanicus seized the initiative. He swiftly ordered his cavalry on the left flank forth to assault the exposed Germanic right flank. The elite Roman cavalry smashed through the ranks of Germanic infantry, causing sheer chaos. Tacitus notes that at this point, 8 eagles flew overhead, atop the Roman position and toward the Germanic lines. This positive omen inspires the Roman army. Germanicus opts for a full-scale attack, sending forth his heavy Roman legions. With momentum on their sides, the Roman legions surged forward in disciplined ranks. The sound of tens of thousands of heavy Roman legionnaires advancing was a terrifying sight to behold. Their metal armor and swords clattered across the plains. The sheer sight of such an organized mass of professionally disciplined soldiers sent fear into the Germanic ranks, as they knew all too well that in this environment, this open field terrain, that the Roman legion was at their very most dangerous. The Germanics counterattacked fiercely, but their long, loose line began to bend under the weight of Roman steel. On the Roman left, their cavalry wheeled against the Germanic flank, cutting down warriors as they tried to regroup. With all sides now fully committed, Arminius realizes his army is losing the melee and is desperate to gain any advantage. It's at this point he springs yet another trap on the Romans. He gives the signal. His hidden Germanic cavalry emerge from the woods and ride straight toward the Roman right flank. The tide of the battle is quickly turning in favor of the Romans. The Germanic cavalry arrive just in time to hit the Roman flank. Germanicus had taken caution prior to the battle. He left a contingent of Roman cavalry in reserve just in case of this very moment. His cavalry spring into action and countercharge the Germanic riders. With their assistance on the right flank amongst the heavy Roman legions, they are able to stave off the threat of the Germanic cavalry. The Germanics, outmatched and outwitted by a superior fighting force, lose cohesion and begin to tactfully retreat into the nearby woods. The Romans, however, were in no mood to show mercy. They pursued them relentlessly. Those who ran toward the river were slaughtered on the banks. Arminius himself fought with desperate valor. Covered in blood and wounded, he narrowly escaped capture by disguising himself and retreating into the woods. His uncle Inguiomerus was also badly injured but fled with a handful of survivors. Tacitus describes the battlefield as a terrible scene, the plain filled with the dead, the woods choked with bodies, the river stained red. The victory was decisive. Roman losses were light, while the Germanics suffered devastating casualties. Germanicus erected a trophy of captured arms and inscribed it to Mars, Jupiter, and Augustus, declaring the Germanic tribes vanquished. Yet despite the triumph, the war was not over. Arminius rallied survivors and continued to resist. Tiberius, fearing overextension, soon recalled Germanicus to Rome, leaving Germania unconquered.